Hello, it's Amy, and I am back with the Journal of Emily Shore. Today we are beginning with the entry for January the 11th, 1839, which was a Friday. Soon after breakfast, Mr. Freeman called. "Have you perceived," he said, "that it is a lest, which is the same as the African sirocco? This is the wind in which invalids are always well, and the weather is perfectly to be depended on, as soon and as long as it lasts, so that it must be taken advantage of for expeditions, for it is as warm up in the mountains as it is down here." And then, with his usual kindness, he offered me his horse again, having just finished his own ride, and suggested to me that I might go up to the Mount Church, the distance to which is 3 miles and 2,000 feet. I embraced the idea with delight. I enjoyed the ride thoroughly, and as for the scenery, I never saw anything like it, for hitherto I have hardly been any way out of Funchal. We went to the Mount Road, part of which I had ridden yesterday in my way to the Levada. From this it is a continued ascent up to the church, slightly winding, partly between garden walls, partly between natural rocky banks. It is useless to expatiate on the beauties of these gardens, their corridors of vines and coffee plants, their walls and verandas covered with splendid geraniums, scarlet salvias and roses, their hedges of luxuriant fuchsia, their mantles of ivy. As I proceeded upwards, the hedge banks became crowned with walnut trees and clothed with myrtles, aloes, broom, ivy, brambles, geraniums, laurel, stonecrops, and many other plants, both native and Madeiranese. A turn to the left, not far below the church, brought me suddenly to the brink of a precipice overlooking a great ravine that spread out gradually as it reaches Funchal. On the right side were the garden walls of the thickly wooded quintas of Mr. Stoddart and Mr. Phelps. On the left was the abrupt, undefended precipice, nearly perpendicular and perhaps 400 feet in height. The road is broad, almost level, and shaded with walnuts and ash trees, and a large evergreen tree, something like the ilex. The sides and bottom of the ravine are scattered with all kinds of trees, and some parts very thickly, and a mountain torrent, tumbling down in little cascades, foams along the bottom with a loud noise. The whole scene was more grand and beautiful than anything I have seen. I do not think I ever looked down so deep a descent in inland scenery. I looked over the whole ravine, every tree and shrub below me diminished by the distance into low bushes, while above still towered the lofty mountains. The road continued along the brink for about 10 minutes, when I turned to the right and entered a shady road immediately under the mound on which the church stands. The banks were covered with violets and periwinkles, and crowned with chestnuts, walnuts, and the same dark evergreen. Winding round, I at length alighted from the horse on a walled platform at the foot of the church. 68 steps from this led up to the door. I mounted them, and after gasping for breath for some time, leisurely examined the noble view beneath. Funchal is almost hidden by the interposing hill. All around is the magnificence of mountain scenery, and such an extent of dazzling sea I have never beheld. January 13th, Sunday. While they went to church in the morning, I was, as usual, left alone, and I sank into a long, melancholy reverie on subjects which will intrude themselves whenever I am alone, now that the busy excitement of our voyage and arrival is over. In leaving England, I left so much that was dear to me. In Madeira, I may possess content, and indeed, as far as preservation from real misfortune and affliction goes, I ought to esteem myself happy. But all the enjoyment of happiness is gone, and I cannot return. I knew I should feel it so, and the time is now come in which I feel it heavily. I shall not see any more the 2 or 3 dear friends I left in England, nor any of the other kind familiar faces I used to see with pleasure. I am torn away from all old associations, from everything like a home. There is nothing in Madeira which is dear to me. The land, the people are new and unknown and strange. Nay, it makes no little difference to me that in every room of the house I look round on strange furniture, which belongs to another instead of our own, which I remember from earliest childhood. At Woodbury, and even at Bartley Lodge, almost every object was familiar to me. Madeira I admire with intense admiration, but she is to me as a beautiful stranger. England I knew and loved fondly. Oh, there are moments when visions start up before me of sweet, well-known spots, woods where the anemone and bluebell grow, streams shaded with ash trees and hawthorn, where I have wandered alone in early spring mornings on violets and primroses and grass drenched with dew, myself the happiest of the happy, listening to the songs of the birds and shaking over me a shower of bright drops as I gather the branches of the willows or bullace. Lanes, too, carpeted with green turf, and sloping meadows covered with broom and marsh marigold. All these and other spots, full of 1,000 sweet recollections, the sad ones for the time forgotten, will picture themselves so vividly to my mind that my eyes will fill with bitter tears. But indeed, year after year has stripped me of enjoyment, even before I left England. The loss of health and strength has altogether deprived me of the active amusements, the rambles and observations of nature, in which I so much delighted, and has continually checked me in my studies, in which I delighted as much. And there are other causes, mental ones, which prevent my enjoying things as I once did. But they are partly my own fault, and partly what I share in common with others. Oh, how many happy hours which seem to me but as yesterday start up in contrast with the present. I live it all over again, and I cannot avoid weeping. There is no language to describe the sharp pain of past and regretted happiness. I was much happier as a child than I am now, or ever shall be, and if I were not now with Mamma, I should sink into an incurable melancholy. Oh, how bitter it is to be parted with friends and expect to see them no more. Faces I yearn to see haunt my pillow and surround my chair. No more. I was led into these thoughts by a verse in Keeble's hymn for today about the willow and the moist and reedy grass. A word will kindle up a long train of associations. I was immediately transported to the banks of the pretty little gouache and surrounded by the silence and stillness and dewy brightness of a May morning. All my feelings of affection are left in England. I could, with happiness and enjoyment, live in Madeira for even 2 or 3 years. If I could feel, I should then return to the same home I left. But this can never be. We have no home left in England, no spot which expects to see us again. Nay, more, we have no home anywhere, and if we do make one, it will probably be in Madeira. January 14th, Monday. Housekeeping here is a very different thing from what it is in England. It is necessary to be constantly overlooking the servants, for they cannot be trusted to prepare things carefully themselves. It is mine or Mamma's regular morning business to boil or see-boil the coffee for breakfast, to get the Milo prepared, to see that the milk and butter are properly disposed of, and in short, to overlook every arrangement. And I'm sure when she says they must constantly overlook the servants, I would guess that's probably a cultural difference, because I imagine, the kind of coffee prepared in Madeira would be quite different from the methods of preparation for the coffee they would be drinking in England. And so it's probably nothing to do with the servants or their, lack of competency, as, she seems to imply here, but probably more to do with the cultural norms of the way that would be prepared. And the milk and butter, the milk and butter may be different in taste and preparation as well. But she says, all this is unpleasant enough to our English habits, but we hope in time to drill our servants into more regular ways of business. Maria is an extremely quick and teachable girl. We had a dish of excellent green peas at dinner, this on the 14th of January. And we're about 10 minutes in, so I'll leave it at that. We'll be back tomorrow with the entry for January the 15th, 1839. Thank you.